double down on our efforts to catch up with science and technology and innovation. Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
The problem being that, while we have our PhDs here, there aren't enough of us. And everywhere else in the world, for research to be successful, you need a complete research group.
It's very important that the PAASE members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we will know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that the Filipinos can have to do science with their PAASE counterparts.
I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country.
The role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology global-based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people. So we have 34 participants. Can you hear me? Well?
Yeah, very clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us at this Fireside Chat episode 23, which is the launch of our SciEnggJ journal, now the official journal of PAASE, or the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. Thanks to our PAASE leaders, officers, and BOT members, our rec chairs and co-chairs, and the rest of the scientific community attending today, including our colleagues from the DOST. This bodes well for SciEnggJ, seeing you here. And so I'd like to start by introducing our speakers. So I won't post the poster anymore because I'm already in the homepage of the SciEnggJ. So I will introduce them in the order of speaking this morning. I'll just give a short history of Philippine Science Letters, now SciEnggJ. Afterwards, I'll ask co-editor Wendell Rivera of the Institute of Biology, UP Diliman, to walk us through the website, okay, and give all the important information. And then Wendell will be followed by Dr. Gobet Advincula, who is our advisor of SciEnggJ and convinced us about many new things we're doing in this journal. And as you know, he's professor in Case Western Reserve University and also with the Oakland National Laboratory in Tennessee. Okay, is that not Oakland? It's Oak Ridge. I'm sorry. Okay, then we will have a talk by our popular science editor, Billy Atienza, who's actually a freelance writer, and he's our pop sci editor. And he'll show you some of his past articles, and he'll also tell you about our plan to feature some of our past luminaries in the journal. Then we will have Richmond Pancho, who is our managing and copy editor. And he might still be busy attending to his day job or full-time job in Quezon Hall in UP, but he will walk us through the review process and what the expectations are for the authors, the reviewers, the editors. And then I'm going to say a bit about ethics. Okay. Unfortunately, our English editor, Edwin Abaya, cannot join us today, but Edwin has been with us for many years now. So he does the English editing. He's an AB philosophy graduate of the UP. And this was his way, this is his way of giving back to UP. He's a PhD graduate of the University of Chicago. So let me just tell you a bit about the history of SciEnggJ. So it was co-founded by myself and Ed Padlan, one of our stalwarts or senior members of the PAASE. And we wanted to have a journal that would feature the work of Filipino scientists based here and abroad. Okay? So we were the co-editors for very many years, and we really tried our best. And the PSL website already looked nice when Marvin Altamia, our copy and managing editor then, well, he designed this very simple logo of the PSL. Okay. And then sometime in 2012, was it, or late 2011, we got major support and interest from USAID Stride. And the chief of party then, David Hall, wanted us to expand the viewership of our journal, readership of our journal, to include engineers or people who are practicing science and technology in the regions. And so we then decided to feature the USAID Stride white paper on the STI ecosystem, and we included, or we now added, PopSci, or popular science articles. And we got major support from USAID Stride for this, and got in Billy Atienza to write laymanized articles, popularized articles of our scientific publications. Okay, now fast forward to PAASE. Let me just say that Ed Badlan and I dreamed that this would be the Journal of the PAASE. This is how we planned it. But I guess it took a few years for us to show that this journal would be worthy to be named the official journal of the PAASE. So we discussed it at the board, and there we decided, together with advice from eminent members of the board like Gobet Advincula and Carlito Lebrilla, that we would have to change the name because no journal, international journal, carries the name of a country except for the Journal of the American Chemical Society, or JACS. Okay, so successful journals do not carry the name of a country. Okay, very few exceptions, like the European Journal of EMBO, Molecular Biology Journal. All right, so I guess with that guidance, we decided that yes, we would come up with a modern, catchy name, but also one that would emphasize the need for engineering researchers to publish. And that is why we came up with SciEnggJ. And together with our managing editor, Richmond Pancho, Wendell and I came up with this logo, okay? And the flame is an SES. And then we presented it to the board, and finally they said, hey, it looks okay now. Okay. I'd like to thank all of our supporters in the past, especially Dr. Padlan and then Dr. Dave Hall and Yosaid Stride, most especially to our authors who published at the time and continue to publish, among them stalwarts of PAASE like Joe Cruz or Eddie Mendoza or CP David. And Ed Padlan has an article written, published recently. Ernie Pernia also has an article. Raymond Tan. So people like them publish in PSL. Even if you say that, you know, it doesn't have an impact factor yet, but they say we have to showcase the work of Filipino authors, say, in a Philippine-based journal. Okay, so I'd like to thank all of them. And so at this point, we can proceed with Wendell telling us more about SciEnggJ. Wendell?
Thank you, Giselle, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, so Giselle has mentioned about the history of the journal from PSL down to its transition now to SciEnggJ. And I'll walk you through this website being shown by Giselle to us now. So of course, I think everyone is familiar with the journal as a PSL, and I hope you have visited the journal at the website in the past. No? And clearly we can see here, that the website itself is really attractive to most of authors, of course, and readers. And we do publish a number of articles, and that will be shown later in the next tab about. No? And being a science and engineering journal, obviously we expect that we have all types of topics, in science and engineering, and we are really thankful to the authors for submitting varied topics on science and engineering.
I'm just showing the homepage.
Yeah. Yes.
This is the homepage.
Very colorful.
Very colorful. See, so we're familiar with many of these authors from the Ateneo, from La Salle, from UP, from UST, from his paper. Okay, so there is even from the late Barry Ong. So Aris, his PhD student, I think, and his RA, his senior RA, and Barry published. Okay, look at this. Beautiful.
Thank you, Giselle.
So now I'm gonna go to the
next tab.
Yeah, the next tab, which is sorry, the coverage, no, about us. So sorry about this. I'm also trying to admit people in because I think Richmond is not yet here. So I'm also the administrator. Sorry. Okay, up again. So you know that we've had some delays, especially during COVID also. So I think we have to apologize for that, but we've resolved to do much better for SciEnggJ. Okay. So now about
yeah.
Oh, you know what? It doesn't work this way. So let me see. There you go. There.
Okay. Thank you, Giselle. Okay, so as you can see here, SciEnggJ would still cater to different types of articles, just like in PSL, it would publish research articles, commentaries, letters to the editor on different fields of sciences and engineering, of course. And then we will feature position papers, white papers, of course, our favorite popular science articles, and even articles on prominent Filipino scientists and their work. So we would like to look forward, of course, to your contributions to these types of articles. Okay, and then down the line, you will see here the members of the editorial board. Okay. Gobet is now our advisor, okay, to of the journal. And then, as mentioned by Giselle earlier, we have a language editor, Edwin Abaya, and of course our managing editor, Richmond Pancho. Okay, we tried to update the list of members of the editorial board, and later on, Giselle and I will further discuss this along with Gobet, most likely, so that we can include more names to the editorial board. Okay, Giselle, maybe we can move to the next tab.
Yes. Yeah. Next tab. Okay, so I'll just go by. Okay, so
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so the tab says support SciEnggJ. Of course, we would like to get donations as well, okay, from partners. Okay, and as the tab mentions, there are different ways to lend a hand to SciEnggJ. So we are encouraging interested science, engineering, and technology-oriented organizations and practitioners to have a partnership with them. Okay, so they may email co-editors at scienggj.org to discuss the terms of partnership. Or one may directly donate to the organization through a bank transfer, and just email the scanned copy of the deposit slip to Dr. Irene Villaseñor, our treasurer. Okay, so we would like, yes,
yeah,
yes,
I'd
please,
like to
Giselle.
acknowledge our friends from colleagues from TIP, Technological Institute of the Philippines, because you're talking about support SciEnggJ. For example, if TIP wanted to have a space in SciEnggJ to feature some of their activities or their events, then that would be possible. And that could be like a moving banner, like 3 banners or so. So this is how we envision partners, okay, who would advertise their science and engineering activities and advocacies. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. Okay, so I guess we can move to the next tab.
Yes. So now we have
Okay.
archives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, obviously in this tab, you will be able to see the PAASE articles. Okay, and you'll see here, clearly see here that the history of the journal since its inception, and also the first volume that was produced in the year 2008 until the present. Okay, and of course, you are also aware that sometime in 2015, the journal Philippine Science Letters was renamed as International Journal of Philippine Science and Technology, IJPST, or PhilSciTech. Okay, it was named IJPST for about 2 years, and then we reverted back to the original name PSL in, I think it was in 2017. Okay, that was the time when I joined the editorial board. So that was, yes, Giselle.
I'm sorry, but I missed that part, and I guess I didn't want to emphasize it too much earlier. But that was during the time that we got major support from USAID Stride, Scholar One, and Billy, and that is because they wanted to emphasize that it is an international journal. When Ed Padlan and I started this, it was really to feature the work of Filipino scientists here and abroad. But then at some point, we decided we can also accept articles from non-Filipinos as long as it's work that's relevant to the Philippines and the region, because we have the same problems to address. We have the same scientific interests or engineering research. So we moved to international journal, but then that was the time when there was a proliferation of many predatory journals, and they contained the name international. And at some point, we realized that we had to move back to PSL. So we did that soon. At this
That's right.
point, I'd like to recognize other people because this is important, Wendell,
Yeah.
to emphasize that we cover the social sciences as well. Okay, so we have with us our PASA member and Dean of CSSP VP Diliman, Bernadetta Brera. Thanks for joining us. We also have Virgie Cuevas from the NAST, and she's very prolific even until now at publishing work. So thank you all for joining. And maybe we can move now to the next
Yeah.
tab.
Yes.
Okay, special
Oh,
issue.
special issue. Wow. Right.
Wow. Amazing.
So we now have, I think, 4 special issues from years 2018 up to the present. And what we did was to collaborate with the Philippine Society for Microbiology starting in the year 2018 up to the present on producing a special issue on microbiology on a yearly basis. Okay, so we are very happy that our colleagues in microbiology were so supportive of this initiative of the PSL with the PSM. Okay, so of course, as mentioned by Giselle earlier, there is also an initiative for all RECs to produce their own special issues. So we would like to encourage you to please support that initiative on special issues. Yes, Giselle.
For that, I'd like to thank you, okay, for coming up with special issues. And very special thanks to our PASA member and NAST member, Sean Raimundo, who's here with us. Together with Victor Amoroso, thanks for joining. Cecil Reyes, I'm sorry if I'm not able to recognize or acknowledge the presence of everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think Wendell, you transformed PSL, and we really chose the right successor for editor of the SciEnggJ. It's really Wendell. Okay,
Okay.
now your ebook. Oh,
Yeah, the ebook.
I wonder if Dr. Gross is joining us.
I invited her, but I haven't seen him in the participants. Well, this one is a new addition to the website. It was just produced last year. We produced an ebook. This is an initiative of Professor Emeritus Milagrosa Martinez Goss of the Institute of Biological Sciences in UP Los Baños, along with Professor Nerissa Torreta. So the three of us worked on this book on methods in microalgal studies, and we have many authors coming from the UP system here, and of course, scientists also, phycologists in particular, who are working abroad, who contributed also in the production of this book. So we all thank them. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So earlier, I think we had a conversation with our DOST colleague who's a PASA member, Julius Liano, who is also a REC chair. And, the UST has a lot of research that can be published, and they're celebrating their 55th year, is it, Julius? So we can think of special issues that are thematic or based on your institutes, and maybe come up with an ebook for the DOST. Okay, so something that we could consider. So Wendell, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about at this point?
Yeah, maybe we can move to the tab on publication fee and payment mechanism.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, so I would like to inform everyone that since we have transitioned into SciEnggJ, we will be asking for kind of a page charge, okay, or publication fee. But take note that if you're a PAASE member, you will get a discount for Philippine-based PAASE authors. An article would cost you about 2,000 pesos. For foreign-based PAASE authors, 70 US dollars. Okay, for Philippine-based non-PAASE authors, that's 3,000 pesos. And for foreign-based non-PAASE authors, about $100 for an article. Okay. So that's the new mechanism for payment. Thank you, Giselle.
It's much lower, much lower, Wendell.
Right.
Everyone, it's just our way of trying to get SciEnggJ to become financially secure. That was one of the conditions for having it approved as our PAASE journal, because we really have to spend some money on a monthly basis to maintain this kind of website or make it even better and more efficient. So I hope that our authors find this to be a very reasonable amount. And if some of our friends and colleagues would like to donate to SciEnggJ, we would be most appreciative. Thank you, Wendell.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I think we're ready to give the floor to Gobet, Dr. Advincula, for your inspirational message. Gobet, please. I can stop sharing if you need some slides. Gobet, do you have some slides?
I'll basically show you a website.
Okay, I'll stop share now.
A journal that I'm the editor-in-chief right now. So first of all, thank you very much, Giselle, for this opportunity to talk to our audience. And I should congratulate you and Wendell for a job well done and perhaps a very important and rising occasion on scientific publications in the Philippines. And as a number of our audience here, participants are new to the publication game, I'm here to give you some very good advice, hopefully. So a little of my background. Yes, I'm a professor at Case Western Reserve University. I recently moved to University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Laboratory as a governor's chair. But as far as I can remember, starting your scientific career means that you are in the publication game. If you are not, then you are in a different profession as far as STEM disciplines are concerned. For example, when you write your thesis, your dissertation, your bachelor, that is a publication, believe it or not. You've had your first paper when you wrote your thesis or research paper and have it publicly available. And so many years after I did get my bachelor's degree at the University of the Philippines Institute of Chemistry. And then I went to the University of Florida and took my PhD in chemistry as well. I did 2 postdocs, one at Max Planck Institute for Polymer Research in Mainz, Germany. And then my last postdoc at Stanford University, Chemical Engineering, before I assumed my first professor position at University of Alabama at Birmingham. So why is it important for me to emphasize those things? Well, at every stage, I have to deal with publication. First of all, at UP, and I think it still is a requirement, you do a senior research or BS thesis that we publish. It's a public document. I still have my copy. And then, of course, to get my PhD, I need to publish my thesis, but also out of the thesis, I have several papers published in peer-reviewed journals. And then, of course, during my postdoc years, I published several papers as well. Well, I could have joined a company and or other profession, track in industry, and believe it or not, you will be also publishing. It's called patent. So you will have to write, document your discovery, and patent it. But as a professor since '97, I have been involved in publishing and mentoring authors. That is, I have my PhD students also getting their first paper, their thesis published, and several papers out, meaning it's almost a requirement, definitely, that in order to graduate, you need to have published 2 or 3 papers. And so the history proceeded from '97 until now, 2021. I'm still in the publication game. We published close to about 550 papers from my group, and I have been editorial board of several journals with the Elsevier and American Chemical Society, including ACS Applied Polymer Interfaces and Materials, Macromolecules, Chemistry of Materials. Prior to my current assignment, I was editor of reactive and functional polymers with Elsevier, but now I am editor-in-chief of MRS Communications with Springer. So with all this history, let me distill down what writing a paper is. Writing a paper is really telling a story. It's as simple as telling a story. And why do you think this is so important? Telling a story means that you have a narrative that you can communicate to others that will be interesting, informative, okay, archival, or simply useful. And one trait that you will be surprised that is inborn among Filipinos is we like to tell stories, okay? We like to tell stories, we like to narrate, we like to pass on information. Sometimes we want to pass on chismis, okay? So I believe, and I have seen it in many of my graduate students who are from the Philippines, they're almost all natural writers. That is, they're able to translate, especially with a good English background, what their results are, what their literature survey is, and how to make conclusion. In fact, as part of the help I've done through the years, mentored many Filipino students, apart from helping them write papers, is definitely provide the environment by which they can do their experiments, which is my research laboratory. So when you tell a story, you want to scaffold it in a narrative such that, one, you have to make it interesting. You have to have a narrative that starts from the beginning and concludes at the end. And at the beginning, you should not make it boring. You should make it at least curiosity driven, or even putting a hook such that the abstract, for example, is, by the way, the most important part of a paper, because it is read first and it determines whether the reader will read your paper to the end. So it's very, very important that the abstract contains essential things, but it's also interesting. With narration, you, of course, lay out the background, the facts, then that is your introduction. You need to have a good survey. And I like to have my introduction not only laying out the facts or the chronology or the development of things, but I was almost always like to end up with a problem or a proposition. Maybe that's something that has come out with most engineers. Engineers love to solve problems. But as a scientist, you want to pose a question, what if things were different, or what are the challenges of the current field? And then when you go through the methodology, which is your methods or procedures, and some people like to put that at the very end of their article. Nowadays, you can do that. But in a traditional format, of course, you lay out the methodology. And it's not just a list of procedures or reagents you use, but it should be helpful, because eventually people would like to duplicate your work. And Sometimes this can be repeated again, and sometimes that can be a source of problem with any authentication or plagiarism software. But it is very important that you document what you did and how it should be done and what are the sources of materials. And then the results and discussion. What distinguishes a technical report from a paper is that you try to structure it such that you lay out a case. Like a lawyer, perhaps you document your evidences carefully to point to a narrative that will allow you to have a good conclusion. In other words, both good and bad results can actually be used. And sometimes when you have so much results that some of them does not seem to make the point, nowadays you can have a supplementary information file. And I don't know if SciEnggJ has this option as well. And especially with the short papers or communications, this is very helpful because you can put a lot of useful information there that will enable you to just focus on the essential parts of your story. And then the conclusion. The conclusion should be something where your audience will have a takeaway. We'll be able to take that, and it's not just a repetition of the abstract, although there is a possibility that they have a lot of overlap. But the conclusion should not be a list of conclusions. It should always, with brevity, leave a summary that allows one to have a take-home message. Okay. There are different styles of publication. So for example, in your contribution with SciEnggJ or any journal, you can have perhaps a letter or a communication, which is a shorter article, but nevertheless a full work. You can have a full article, which has a lot of your main story laid out in a longer format, but complete, and again, embodies a complete work, if possible. One can write review articles or perspectives. Review articles are helpful. In fact, the most cited work in any publication survey are typically that of review articles and even letters. Letters and review articles typically have a higher citation, but definitely review articles. The reason is just people just use them, or they find it helpful to cite your work because you have a review. And sometimes reviews are not really for anyone. And some editors-in-chief actually do this only by invitation. So review articles allow you to have a good summary of the field. Perspectives, for example, allows you to give good conclusion or an opinion on where the future work will go. And then other types of contributions could be letters to the editors and, of course, corrections. Now, talking about special issues, it's very, very helpful for the journal, SciEnggJ, to solicit good special issues. The reason is that special issues are almost a compendium or a virtual issue that lumps together topics of the same field. So I really, really encourage that rec leaders, one of their biggest projects should be to come up with a special issue for SciEnggJ. Special issues have to be done well so that there's a theme, and sometimes you can do what we call a virtual special issue. And this can be composed of various types of contributions from different volumes that you can compound together, because these days everything is in the web. So you don't have to come up with one special issue, but you can just collect a number of topics and create the virtual issue for the journal. So all those things are options. Now, let me talk to you about impact factors and why is it important that the journal, in order to be sustainable, has to have a rising, if not maintained, impact factor. These days, we like to be in the best venue, or we like to be seen with the best people. And I would not say This is something that it can be belittled, although it can also be overblown. Impact factor does not mean very high citation. Some of the best cited papers are found in a not so high impact paper. The important thing is quality contribution. So I hope SciEnggJ is careful to screen, review quality contribution. Okay. Quality contribution means high citations. High citations with less number of articles means high impact factor. Let me repeat. High citations with less number of articles means high impact factor. And it's a metric that is forwarding. In other words, you plan for these 2 or 3 years ahead. Now, SciEnggJ, if the goal is to have an impact factor that and also an international renown, and that was one of the reasons why Giselle emphasized the change in name, is that as a contributor, as an author, you have a choice, and we know that you can contribute, of course, to nature or science, your best work, or to something closer to your professional society, like the American Chemical Society for me. Then you would want to submit your paper on ISI reviewed or rank journals with the possibility of getting it even more cited. Now, SciEnggJ has to strive in that direction, because it will be amiss if we will just call this a Philippine journal or even a PAASE journal, because eventually you guys, especially the young scientists and engineers, you would want your best work in the best platform available. And SciEnggJ has to compete for that attention or compete for that privilege at all. So these are all high goals one can try to emulate or achieve. It is possible. The seed has been given with the journal. It is supported by your PAASE, and Wendell emphasized the open access fee. It is modest, I can tell you. Some major journals have 10 times what the journal is charging. So it is a modest fee, and you can certainly, even as a young author or young in your career, you certainly should contribute to SciEnggJ. Now, a couple more things before I close. And actually, Giselle, I'd like to open up some question and answer session if possible, because there might be some topics that I missed, but I'll be happy to advise. What I can say is that the journal SciEnggJ is purposely named in order to get contributions related to sciences and engineering, meaning it can be a community, it can be a place where your best contribution can go to. So the purpose of a journal really is not only for you to be submitting your best work and get a citation, but really it is building a community. A lot of journals, and this is the advice that I gave even to MRS Communications when I was being interviewed, is that as an editor-in-chief, I am interested in a community. And in this case, we can start by saying that we want a community for Philippine scientists and engineers to contribute. But it need not be that way. We just really want to have a venue, a community by which the best work of scientists and engineers, and it goes beyond Philippine contribution, can be a venue for publishing. So much luck, congratulations, and I look forward to working with SciEnggJ and seeing your the journal gain much success. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the audience may have.
If there are any questions, please just unmute and ask Gobet the question. I think there will be questions even later, but Gobet, I wanted to note the supplementary material that we will be asking our authors to submit. We know that in many journals nowadays, the format is simple and it is precisely to make the article attractive, right? And you have oftentimes the results and the discussion coming before the methods and the materials. But then the data and the results are usually like graphs, you know, they're like secondary representations of your experimental results. Now, good journals will always ask for the actual data that you obtained. Okay, so in the case of chemists reporting new compounds, you'd have to provide the NMR data as well as the mass spec data and other data. Okay, and these are all important to ensure the quality of the article. Am I right, Gobet?
Yeah, Giselle, this is very important because, again, I emphasize that when you write a paper, you're writing a story. You don't want to bore with so many charts and data when you're trying to invite readership and citation. We all know that we want to go through and read a good story, but we also don't want to be too boring because we, you know, with this age of Facebook and everything, we get bored easily. So a lot of this data, which is very important for verification, for archiving, and for methodologies. In fact, many journals today are even adapting a journal within a journal. It's called methods. Okay, so even journals are trying to create that venue so that they can be very explicit in laying out the methodology for repeatability. And by the way, science is very important. When you report something and if nobody can reproduce it, it's junk. Okay, so that's the very important tenet of a paper, that it should be lay out something that's repeatable, duplicated, and so you need to strive for that type of quality. I think Al has a question. He raises his hand. Al?
Yeah, no, it's not a question actually, just wanting to relate it to the two recent funded start centers that USAID Stride just released for both LaSalle and UP to actually help in not only proposal writing. I think they already have a module for publication writing, which we can at PAASE enroll whoever's willing and excited to publish in SciEngG. By the way, I like the Eng inclusion in the title indeed. So that was a good job, guys. But we can definitely piggyback on a funded instruction already being available from both UP and LaSalle to train, and it can be an actual write-up of an actual paper who are interested in publishing in SciEnggJ already, and USAID Stride can possibly fund it. I have a planning meeting with them at 10 a.m. and I can bring it up if I don't see any Stride representatives here. But we are having our planning meeting, and definitely I can include the publication write-up of actual interested parties to actually write and directly publish in SciEnggJ in the next run. And of course, I like the Rex kind of sponsored. I only have one good publication, I would say, in my career early on in graduate school. I was published in Biotechnology and Bioengineering, BNB. And I didn't know that you can split up your publication. I had a 20-page article when I could split it in 3 papers. But back then, I couldn't care less. I didn't want to publish in the first place, but my advisor pushed me now thinking back as Gobet was going after his 500 plus publication, definitely I would encourage everyone to actually look at as the beginning of your career as a contribution to the community that you're in. Indeed, it's not about you simply, but it's also about your community to make it more interactive in the sense that having a critical mass, like what I'm seeing now at PTRI with Julius's thing, they're now getting approaching a critical mass of scientists that are going to be very high generating. So definitely, I very much encouraged with this. And again, I will definitely want to include the start centers
Thanks,
right
Al.
now. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So we're waiting for the start program of the Stride, hosted by UP and DLSU, to recruit some of our PASA members as mentors, right? And Al, you're right. We need many of them because mentoring to write an article in a, say, in the modeling field is very different also from mentoring in the writing of a paper, say in the chemistry or the bio field. So I think you would need a lot of mentors there. And this is something that I experienced in Quezon Hall when we had such a program. And so we had a math mentor, we had a social science mentor, because it's different. You know, you have graduate students and young researchers who need this kind of advice on a very specialized basis. The other major thing that Gobet mentioned, before I move on to our next two speakers, is this repeatability. So 2 Mondays ago, our PASA member and NAST member, Ed Wang, who is the chair of the Research Integrity Committee of UP Manila, hosted a webinar, and I gave a talk on, the 2 of the 3 sins of publishing. It's on fraud, no? So it's fabrication and falsification. And so you actually have a lot of journals with high impact factors, which also have the highest retraction rates. So I think it's so important for us to ensure that our articles are of a high quality. And one of the ways to ensure this, Wendell, is for us to require the supplementary material as basis for the data. So the other, of course, is plagiarism. Plagiarism is on words and thoughts, and then fabrication and falsification are on the data. Okay, so we have, yes, go back. We have it. Yes, please go back.
Yeah, so it's very important that thing you mentioned about plagiarism. We regularly in all journals do an authenticate service. There's a plagiarism checking software that we use, and I think SciEnggJ should use one. Even the author should make it a point or standard that they check their own work, and it has to confirm to a certain score. Now, there are different algorithms for finding that common words or things that can constitute plagiarism. But it's very important that you have a pledge, and even as an author, that you be conscientious about this. For example, other types of things were co-authorship. I know it's very important that we include people who contribute, but these days there's a conflict of interest and a statement about author contribution because is an author simply because they're the boss, or did they contribute in reading, writing, doing the experiment? Some journals are very explicit that you lay out these statements up front. And of course, acknowledgement. Was it funded by this particular agency or funding by the university, things like that. So yeah, very good. So the ethics statement is something that every author should carefully look at if you're not familiar. Now, this is again a very important message for those of you who have not written your first paper. I think one of the easiest way if you want to overcome your fear of writing a paper is collaborate with somebody who writes papers. So you may not be the first author, but you can be a second, third, fourth, fifth author. You contribute a data on a big body of work with the first author leading the writing. Okay, that could be your first paper. You don't have to be the first author to get your first paper, but at least get into the practice and being mentored, sometimes really not by your advisor, but somebody who's writing their first paper and being part of that first paper. And then carefully read, contribute, edit. And then when you're bold enough, then you can contribute and make your own first paper. And I'm just telling this from experience. It's very rare for me to see students who wrote their first paper as the first author. I've had several students, but majority of my graduate students, usually I pair them up and they're very, very happy that they got their training from somebody who's a more senior student to get their first paper out.
So mentoring is so important, Gobet, right? So mentoring
Yes.
in the lab, well, unfortunately in the Philippines, we don't have postdocs, something that USAID Stride had identified as a major problem. Postdoc is a mentor who substitutes or who is the alter ego of the head of the lab. And this person makes sure the experiments and data are okay and the writing is good. So going back to the ethics statement, so I'm trying to admit somebody who's coming in, just a moment. That's Wendell is going to prepare an ethics statement that authors who submit manuscripts would have to sign, okay? Now, in regard to plagiarism, yes, you're right, we make use of the apps to check for plagiarism. But as our PAASE member, Yasmin Ronquillo told us sometime back, told me privately, plagiarism does not pertain only to words, but to concepts. Okay, so the research design or the concepts that you use in your research, if you had taken them from somebody else who had published them, you should put in the proper attribution. All right. So I think it's important that we know these things from the outset, from the onset, and the way that we can guide our authors is to have very good reviewers. Very important for our reviewers to do their own part of the job to counter check for FFP. Okay, so those are the three important kinds of scientific misconduct. And a large percentage of the retractions are attributed to misconduct, and others would be through error or negligence. Okay, so at this point, I think we can move on to a next speaker on a lighter topic, also one of the sources of attraction of SciEnggJ and PSL. I'd like to give the floor to Wilfredo Billy Atienza.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Inception. I'll just take a second to share some slides.
All right, let me, sorry, I was not able to, I think I should stop sharing. On you shared.
Yes, I think I can just.
Wait a minute. I am.
Is that?
I should stop sharing mine and then let you be. There you go. Are you in now? Are you sharing? Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you again, Dr. Concepcion, for asking me to share about the popular science articles for SciEnggJ. So I've just prepared a few articles that I've written previously for PSL. But before I share those with you, I just want to go over really quickly what I look for when I look at these articles. Because like Dr. Vincula mentioned earlier, a lot of scientific research really just at the end of the day are stories. But unfortunately, not everyone has the ability to really read these stories. And that's why I think popular science writing and science communication really is important. So the three main things that I look for in a PopSci article, one, they tell a story about the Philippines, which is important because a lot of the time no one else will tell these stories. It falls to us. Two, it platforms work by Filipinos. So if it's not an article about the Philippines, it's something that was written by a Filipino or with heavy involvement by Filipino authors. And three, it promotes science-based solutions to real problems. So I have prepared, I think, 5 articles that I just want to talk very briefly about. So when I talk about telling stories about the Philippines, I think a lot of these end up being ecological stories and that kind of thing. So this is something that I wrote for PSL in 2018 about potential invasive species that some researchers from UP observed in Manila Bay. So they didn't just observe it, they also talked about the potential mechanisms for how this invasive species, a species of mussel, could become an issue in Manila Bay. So again, it's telling these local stories and giving them attention that's really important, because not only do people hear these really interesting stories based in science, but they also ideally lead to solutions. So this could have served as an early warning system or something similar to address this issue. Another story about the Philippines that I covered for PSL a while back, these researchers from UST created a model to predict incidence rates for dengue, so they could predict outbreaks. So they took data regarding climate factors and a lot of other data points, and they combined that all into a model which LGUs could use to ideally predict when an outbreak of dengue might occur. So again, it's this kind of very local storytelling that I think is so important, and that could have a big impact for a lot of Filipinos. So another important thing I think is platforming work by Filipinos. So this is an article. This is not about a single research paper. This is an article about a particular researcher, Dr. Cheryl Andam. She is a microbiologist and a geneticist. She is working in the States right now, but she's still a Filipino researcher, and I think it's really important to pay attention to these really important and really groundbreaking research discoveries by these authors. Because again, no one else a lot of the time is going to tell these stories. And at the same time, when we pay attention to Filipino authors in particular, we see their impact, what they can do in the scientific community, and how they can find solutions to all of these problems, and how they can make discoveries. And ideally, that leads to more resources for Filipino researchers abroad and in the Philippines as well. And it starts really with paying attention to these authors. So again, my last point is about highlighting science-based solutions. So I think it's really important for people to know in a really concrete way how science can help them, how science can make an impact in their lives, for make positive impacts in their lives. So this is an article that I covered for PSL about a very simple device created by some local researchers that farmers could use to check for the presence of pesticides on their crops. So again, this is about a science-based solution benefiting a marginalized group, helping make their work a little bit easier, basically. And again, science-based solutions can all covering science-based solutions also can help us talk to society at large. So when I was writing for PSL, I was always excited to cover stories relating to vaccines. So this is a story I wrote covering 2 local studies about vaccines, basically showing their effectiveness. Because again, we see now, and this was a problem already when I published this piece in 2019, and it's an even bigger problem now with the COVID vaccines, that lots of people are hesitant about vaccines. There's lots of misconceptions and misinformation going around. People think they don't work or they're harmful. So it's this kind of communication that I think is really essential to clearing up those misconceptions, because obviously the sooner we can get people vaccinated, the better. And if we can clear up some of that resistance with effective communication, that all the better for the Philippines going forward. So those are just a few of the articles that I've written for PSL, and I'm very excited that Dr. Concepcion has invited me back to work on PopSci articles for PAASE and SciEnggJ. So just to end my very brief talk, these are just some of the goals that I would have for PopSci and SciEnggJ going forward. So again, I would like to give a bigger platform to more Filipino scientists and science stories. 2, I would love to write a series of articles about PAASE luminaries. Dr. Concepcion has given me a list of some names to look into and publish some longer form stories about these scientists. And I have started looking into some of these names, and the research that I found and the stories that I found about them are really incredible. And even me, as someone who works in a scientific field, I've never heard about these researchers, which I think, again, it's a bit disappointing. So I hope to give their stories a bit more of a platform, so their work can be appreciated, and again, to hopefully get more resources put into local science. 3, to reach a greater audience. We talk a lot about laymanizing these articles, but I think it's also important to remember that the audience for science communication isn't just everyday people. It can also be government employees who might read scientific articles and realize there's an issue or find a solution to a problem that the government can help solve. It can be, your audience can be a business owner, someone who, for example, reads about a device that can help farmers and decides to start manufacturing. So we have to remember that when we are communicating these scientific discoveries, we never know who's going to read them and who's going to be able to turn them into something even better. And 4th, to promote scientific thinking, because I think, again, I mentioned we're dealing a lot with miscommunication and misinformation, and they're causing a lot of issues for us today. And I think scientific thinking is one of the best avenues to address that, and again, to highlight science-based solutions to our problems. So that's all for my talk. Thank you, Dr. Concepcion, for asking me to share.
Thank you, Billy. Let me tell you that Billy is a graduate of the Ateneo. Am I right?
Yes.
You're a comp sci graduate?
Biology graduate.
Biology? But
yes.
Biology. I thought you also had interest in comp sci, but he's been a science advocate ever since he graduated, and he believes that we need to improve the scientific literacy of Philippine society. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned your article on the link between vaccines and autism, and that's really had long-term great repercussions that we feel today. And well, the scientist who is responsible for this falsification or fabrication is very well known. So this is the most celebrated case of F&F in the scientific literature, leading to a lot of retractions of publications of Wakefield. Okay, so we feel the effects of bad science and bad publications at the present time of COVID. Okay, so thank you, Billy, for that.
Thank
Can we
you,
now
Dr.
move
Concepcion.
on? Yes, Billy. Can we now move on to Richmond? So Richmond Pancho, as many of you know, is also our content manager and website manager of our PAASE website. But he's even been the PSL content manager and copy editor for a longer period. So at this point, I'd like to call Richmond to walk us through the review process or the mechanics that we should be following when you submit a manuscript for publication.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Richmond, and I'll be presenting to everyone SciEnggJ's review process. Prior to becoming SciEnggJ, a lot of contributing authors would ask us, well, not contributing authors, but when we invite editors in charge, they would ask us the question of what is the timeline for the review of the journal, and we often lay out the timeline in terms of sending them an email, which is sometimes confusing. So Ma'am Giselle and Sir Wendell asked me to produce a simple infographic to show everyone the review process for SciEnggJ once we transition from PSL. As it is stated here, the manner of review is free-form. The chosen reviewers are encouraged to provide comments of any form and can also make use of the sample referee sheet, which you can find here under for reviewers. We've already provided the sample sheet here. But also you can use the Scholar One's built-in referee sheet, which is more efficient if you ask me. But in any case, for people who, for individuals, for experts who would prefer to use the offline method, we have also offer the platform, the offline platform for their review. Reviewers shall send their comments by you. We mean the EIC, so we'll change the pronoun used here from you to EIC. Reviewers shall send the comments to the EIC within a 3-week period. So after reviewing all the reviews, after receiving all the reviews, the EIC is responsible for collating all the comments by the reviewers. The EIC may decide to accept at that point the manuscript or inform the corresponding author if there's no revision needed, or request the corresponding author to respond point by point if minor revisions are needed, or reject the manuscript altogether and inform the CA with the collated comments if major revisions are needed. If revisions are needed, the CA should respond in a separate letter indicating how the manuscript was revised or not in response to each comment of the reviewers. So this one is already automated by Scholar One. After revisions are incorporated, you may decide to reject, the EIC may decide to reject or accept the manuscript for publication. So in essence, this is the review process. We've color-coded each step in the process, whether it's highly dependent on SciEnggJ as the SciEnggJ staff, the EIC, the reviewer, or the authors. So first we receive a submission, and then of course we are tasked to secure the EIC within 7 days. And afterwards, the editor in charge, once he or she accepts the invitation, should select the reviewers within 7 days, after which the reviewers are tasked to make their comments within 3 weeks or 21 calendar days. After that, the EIC collects all the comments and makes a decision based on the comments within 7 days. So from this point, the EIC can make three decisions. One decision is to outrightly reject the manuscript. Another decision would be to accept it as it is, which is very rare if you ask me. But most commonly, this happens. The manuscript is conditionally accepted because it needs to be revised, whether the revisions are minor, categorized as minor or major. For minor revisions, the corresponding authors are given 7 days to review and to revise the manuscript. For major revisions, the authors are given a full month for their revision. And then afterwards, the second version of the manuscript is sent to the EIC, and then the EIC again is tasked to make a decision within 7 days whether the EIC accepts it or again sends it for another round of revisions. But for simplicity's sake, we've just included here that after the first revision, the EIC already accepts it, or outrightly or rejects it after the first revision. Once the manuscript is accepted, though, we will wait for the corresponding author to send a notification that they've already paid the publication fee through the payment mechanism that we've already provided earlier. And of course, the galley proof will be given to them within 7 days. And of course, the article itself will be published online within that week. For the authors, information, we've also provided some additional submittals. Not just the submission of their manuscript, but also the provision of a certificate of language editing issued by their university's English department or equivalent. And the manuscript also should be processed by an online plagiarism software or application and obtain an acceptable percentage of similarity, which is equal to 15%. And of course, authors should sign and certify that their manuscript's data, figures, graphs, calculations, etc., are authentic. And then pretty soon, we'll be issuing, or we'll be posting a copyright statement for the journal. Giselle, back to you.
Thank you so much, Richmond. It's a lot of work that you've been doing for us. And well, at this point, Wendell knows the pressures that we apply on Richmond to come up with manuscripts in a timely way. But on the other hand, I think that at this point, Wendell, it would be a good time to appeal to our reviewers who are also in the same community to please send your reviews in a timely way. And Wendell, perhaps we could also appeal to our editors, members of the editorial board, to accept your request for them to be editors in charge. Wendell, could you please tell us about your experience?
Yes, Giselle, thank you for that. Yeah, that was an observation. We have actually retained many of those scientists who were part of the PSL, members of the editorial board in PSL in the SciEnggJ journal. But we would like to make that appeal, as Giselle mentioned, because previously we had this experience of, communicating with a member of an editorial board, but well, probably of so many reasons, of course, they decline our invitation to serve as editor in charge. So we would like to seek of course, for the support of the members of the editorial board, and of course, the scientific community in general, PAASE. If you are invited to serve as editor in charge or a reviewer, please, give time and support this work of, helping our colleagues in the science community. Thank you, Giselle.
And yes, Wendell, Richmond mentioned 3 weeks as the period for, submitting the review. That's based on our experience. So ideally, we would like to get the review back in 2 weeks. But more often than not that is not done. I mean, everyone's just so busy. But I think 3 weeks is a reasonable time. And I'd like to note that some of the reviews turned in by our colleagues are top notch, I would say. They really take the reviews seriously and contribute to the improvement of the paper. Okay.
Right.
So one of the metrics, Gobet, I understand, of quality would be what percent of papers are accepted or what percent would be rejected. So do you have a rough figure for this now, Wendell?
Well, it depends on the how old the journal is and also the level of submissions. Typically, with the younger journals or newer journals, if you hit in 1 to 5 years, an acceptance rate of 25 to 50%. That is fine, but that is probably the low end. Typically, you want to go from anywhere to 10 to 25% acceptance, meaning you reject every 3 or 4 out of 5. But that is really more for journals that are popular and with a lot of submissions. But I would say the main point really is to get the best authors contribute their best work to your journal. And these days, there's a lot of competition. That's the reality. And impact factors when they're released is almost like a lagging indicator, meaning things you have done or have not done the previous years will reflect on that. So really trying to get the best submissions, best work from the best people really is a very important mission for the board, the editor-in-chief, and sometimes it's really an active solicitation to get these types of contribution.
All right. So thanks for that. And maybe at this point, we can open the floor to questions. You may type your question in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand and unmute. Unfortunately, Richmond left for the office. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, while the participants are thinking and writing their questions, let me emphasize this to our young colleagues in the audience. And there's a good number from DOST and those who are really interested in writing their first paper. If you think about any metric as a professional where you can have a good show of your capabilities and an appreciation of your potential, writing your papers is very, very important, especially here in the US. It doesn't matter whether it's industry or academia. I mean, you think that paper publications are only for universities or academia, but in hiring decisions by companies, they pay very important, give importance on publications because several things are reflective of you when you publish. One is you're capable of doing the experiments, planning the experiments, perhaps. Another is you're capable of working with people, if you have several co-authors. Third is you're capable of organizing your work and communicating your work. Okay, so all those attributes, if I'm hiring a student, what impresses me is an undergraduate, they even publish. And I talk to many recruiters from industry as well. They look for well-published students. Not only is it useful for promotion, but really, especially in the tenure track in academia, but really it is quite a reflection of your professional potential. And in fact, anything you do these days that you do not report might as well be wasted, or if not hidden, and therefore is not used by society unless somebody digs it up from your notes or from you. So it's a very important decision, especially for our young colleagues here, to be enthusiastic and serious about publishing papers.
I'd like to strengthen that or also support your statements, Gobet. And it's this. I made this statement at my last talk in the Research Integrity webinar. And that is that, well, for engineers or for scientists who have inventions that they would like to patent and commercialize, I think that there is still no way to demonstrate that your invention is good than to first show that you have published good work in your field, okay, before trying to patent and commercialize your invention. So the review process in the patent community is different, okay, and well, I'll note this. You know, the review process would be focused already on the fairness opinion report, okay, for you know, business concerns. But I think that it's important, like you do in the United States, for researchers both in science and engineering, first to demonstrate through a body of work, publications, that you are an expert in this field, and then at some point, then you would go for patent application, or concurrently you would, because in the publication, scientific publication business or endeavor, the review process is very rigorous, and it's among peers. Could you comment on that, please, Gobet?
Yeah, so we are referring, Giselle, to the review process, right? The importance of
Right. The
patent
peer
versus
review process,
papers.
expert review process.
Right.
Yes.
So both requires a good literature read or search. In the case of patent, there are a number of venues you can do this actually for free or even pay a service. But when you write a patent, for sure, the first thing you should assume is somebody already thought of that idea. And that instantly allows you to be very careful in terms of what you will write, and be very exhaustive, or try to be exhaustive with what's available out there. Because there's a difference between, let's say, patenting in the Philippines, in the US. In the US, we have a provisional patent application that buys you time, that allows you to start the process and put a stakeholder a year before you actually publish the full patent. We don't have that in the Philippines. In the Philippines, when you file it, you submit it, you have basically put your stake at that. Now, having said that, and I will not belabor anything with patent preparation and filing in the Philippines. Really, the main difference between publishing and patenting is that in patenting, you have a goal of protecting your invention, or you have the goal of making sure that you can get perhaps royalties out of that patent. But in some cases, you really don't should or should not file a patent if trade secret is good enough for your intents. I mean, filing patents are expensive. Now, with publications, there are differences and actually similarities. Believe it or not, when I submit my provisional patent application here in the US, I write it like a paper. I write it like a publication because a publication actually contains a lot of elements that will go into patent filing. And that has been advice that I've learned from many patent lawyers that, just write your patent like you're writing a paper. So we do that. And we do that. That means we try to be thorough, complete, add different reviews, citations that we have seen. But the audience of a paper does not have to be something that is to protect. The audience of a publication is to communicate and to allow people to replicate. Okay. So it could be another topic, Giselle, regards to patent versus papers. But patents, of course, is a very important product in industry, but also even in universities.
That's right. So, well, in both cases, there must be a good review of the product, okay, of the paper or the invention being patented. I think there are some questions. I'm sorry. I was saying earlier, Gobet, that both publications and patents must undergo expert review, technical review. Okay, now there are other questions and comments here. One from John Ryan Dizon to me. He's asking about copyright. So are we copyright protected? And then we're saying that we intend to put a copyright statement like, it's done internationally, but then John Ryan Dizon Kokoy says that since we are open access, maybe we could just operate under the Creative Commons. What do you think, Gobet?
Yeah, the open access simply means that it's available for free, and it's you don't have to go through a subscription in a journal. In fact, these days when you publish and publishers have they give a choice to authors to either go for an open access, which of course they have to pay, and in the US in European journals this can be as much as $2,000 to $3,000 as well. But the thing there is it's going to be accessed by anyone. You don't have to have a subscription to that journal or paper article. Now, with regards to copyright, this is really the warning. If you intend to patent, for example, do not publish first and patent later. That will not work. You have to patent first, or at least you need to have a provisional patent before you publish. Okay. And with regards to copyright, of course, the copyright, if you bought it as an open access, basically you have the copyright. If it's a subscription, it's owned by the publishing company or the organization associated with the publishing company. Now, with regards to using parts of the paper or using figures or text, you can actually quote a paper in quote unquote or in quotation marks. That is allowable, and you can do it in verbatim. But of course, you cannot abuse it. You just have to reference it for sure. What is plagiarism is copying without giving or attributing or giving credit to whom credit is due. And you can even do that to yourself. There is such a thing as self-plagiarism. But anyway, the point here is for us not to dwell on topics like plagiarism or things that will divide the interest on papers. What I'm really encouraging the audience and participants is do not be afraid to write your first paper. I already gave a tip. If you want to publish a paper, you can publish first as a co-author with a seasoned author or seasoned group. Of course, you contribute by work, experiment, or even with writing. If you want to have a good scaffold on how to write a good paper by yourself, definitely, I think mentoring or attending a seminar. There are seminars on how to write good papers, can give you some structure and inspiration. And then, do not be afraid to write a paper. Write a nice report, write a nice technical report. And then if you have the intent of converting that into a publication, of course, it's better to start at the beginning that your intent is to write a paper. I mean, with my graduate students, they are always, and we are always in the guilt of just writing a technical report, a graduate student report. A report is not necessarily just writing a story, but sometimes it's filling in the blanks. That's the worst that you can do when you first write a paper. So be free-flowing and technically correct, technical English. Write a story, okay? Sometimes the best way is to, of course, read lots of papers because you'll have an idea what are the interesting papers out there, and then you can see their style. As far as writing style, the easiest that I recommend is an ACS writing style. I forgot the name of that booklet. If anyone remembers what it is, it's the author is Trunk, and that's a classic. You know what I'm talking about, Giselle?
Yes. So, Gobet, before anything, I'd like to recognize the presence of Dr. Pernia. So, Dr. Ernie Pernia, Ernie is with us. Thanks for joining. So, years back, Ed Padlan and I would teach a graduate course in MSI on writing of scientific papers. So, there are several books which provide good guidance on this. I actually have the copies in my lab. I've given them to my graduate students. But the other exercise that I think is very useful is to look for a publication in your target journal or something that is similar to what you intend to publish on. And more or less you can tell how this paper made it, okay, to that journal. So for example, Journal of Natural Products, okay, to report new compounds, natural compounds. So I think that's a good exercise. And it could actually—
Still, I have the title of the book.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It is called The Elements of Style by Strank and White. The Elements of Style. Believe it or not, this was written 100 years ago, 1980, and it still is relevant today. It's a good way to have a good technical English prose and brevity. And so I advise you, if you find a book, a free PDF file, web version, whatever, read The Elements of Style by Strank and White.
Yeah. So that's important. So 100 years ago is when all of these letters were being published, and they were mostly published by academies, okay, royal academies, societies, as letters among their members. This is what you emphasized earlier. This is a scientific community that is publishing their research and sharing with their colleagues. And that is why we called it Philippine Science Letters then. And that is why we wanted an independent group like the PAASE to own Philippine Science Letters then, because that's how the journal takes a more objective character. It does not, it's not associated with a university or say with a funding agency. Okay, so I'm glad that now PAASE has adopted SciEnggJ as its journal. But we have to live up to the expectations, Gobet and Wendell, and we're trying our very best with cooperation from our prospective authors and our reviewers and editors as well. So I hope Al is still here. I think you and Gobet raised an important point. Big difference between the US and here is we don't have the provisional patent, which is like good for a year and only costs $100. It's so important now, Al, because we've all moved to the first to file and no longer first to invent, okay, as far as patents are concerned, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we did actually recommend to the IPOFIL to adopt a similar profile for provisional patents. And we're actually trying to do that in UP now,
the DOST. But I think it's IPOFIL that we need to work on.
But pending capability of IPOFIL, you can already file in the US provisional as well, and use that as a placeholder for your priority date for your work. So there's no boundary right now. I just drafted one for provisional patent from here to file it in the US.
All right, so that everyone should be aware of that. I think everyone should be aware, and it only costs $100.
Yeah, the only caveat is you need to have an agent in the US that will have to receive.
That's the one. Then that's expensive. Then the university.
No, actually, that's what we're trying to work in UP now, to have one agent that reviews.
I see. All right.
Before.
So maybe one of our
even before your time with the patents of Cesar Saloma and I think Henry Ramos. There was an agent that acted for that. And if we can use that as a piggyback for registration, then we can do everything by web. I use my old lawyers in Washington, D.C. for mine.
The patent agents that we have here probably could be registered or certified in the U.S.
Correct. They just need a fax file that they receive.
The other person that we should all consider is our PAASE member, former DOJ, is Larry Ilag.
Larry Ilag.
I think Larry Ilag is a patent lawyer. Yes.
That can help definitely. But I would support Gobet's real presentation indeed. That tell your story first, guys. And then if you are concerned that you might have inventions and discoveries that we might need to reserve, then we can help you afterwards. But I think it's in the drafting and the process that you actually put your research and your results on paper. That's best that we can evaluate truly, because there's that element of prior art that's different, similar to a literature review, but in this case you're reviewing the patent literature. So it's a different pathway already, and I don't think a lot of people are well versed in reviewing prior arts unless you're a tech transfer officer that you've been trained for the last 5 years in the Philippines.
Okay,
but
I think what's important, Al, is what I'm saying is even for patent application, what's important to verify also is the data, the good science, and that is why the concurrent or the pursuing patent and publication in parallel, it's very good. The writing of the narrative would be for both, right?
Correct. Actually, that's what's happening now in UP. We always ask for a disclosure, which is usually the pre-publication write-up of the scientist, and then we do our own prior art to help them to say, ano lang, siguro itong section na to, you have a surprising result based on your reduction to practice. Maybe we can file a provisional, if not a full application on that. But if it's a normal publication, just declaring data, reproducing some and extending some of the work, and we can say, okay, it's not that novel, then we'll say it's okay. I mean, you're ready. Just keep on publishing. But tell your story, because it will accelerate both publication and patenting. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm checking for raised hands. No raised hands. So please, Gobet, please continue.
Yeah, just to again belabor that point that Al also is raising, just make it a standard to write a paper and then convert it to a patent later when it's patentable, because everything, most of what you will put in a provisional patent or a full patent could actually already be in your publication. within details, supplementary file, and it's all legalese. What happens basically is the patent lawyer just convert it into a legalese, broadens the language, makes sure it occupies the scope. And I've worked with many lawyers too. I have 15 patents in the U.S. and various styles, but the ones that I find very, very useful, and I've always consistently gotten this advice, is write your paper, complete the paper, and then decide after that if you want to submit it for a provisional patent. And like what Al said, when it's time to write the paper, you already have it. Okay.
Right. Yes. So everyone, please take note in the chat box. You have the title of the book by Strunk White and the PDF file itself is available. Okay, so highly recommended by GoBet. I think John Ryan is asking about copyright again, and I just wanted to reiterate that if you are to make use of a figure or a diagram or a schematic from another paper, then I think you need to ask permission, okay, from the authors that published in SciEnggJ or in an online journal for you to use that figure. So it's always a case of proper attribution. All right. So any other comments and questions here? Did I miss any in the chat box? Please raise your hands now and or just unmute, please.
Hello, I'm Giselle, Kokoy po.
Yes, Kokoy, please.
Yes, thank you. I just brought up that, hello po, good morning, Sir Gobet, Sir Al, and Secretary Pernia, and everyone. Yeah, bring up ko lang po yung copyright because we're writing a paper right now, and I'm securing permission from publishers for our papers. And yeah, I think na-check ko po, I checked the website of SciEnggJ. Parang wala akong nakita po kasing parang wala pa akong nakitang statement, yeah, sorry, statement for copyright pag if some authors would like to use the figures, mga ganyan.
Yes.
Table. So I think we need to include also that statement. Since it's open access, I suggest I don't know, we can adapt some statements from I don't know, Creative Commons or other. And also yung ano po, usually journals have their your DOI para mas madaling makita at mas-cite or yeah. So I think SciEnggJ should also consider securing DOIs or digital object identifiers for the papers. I think you can get that from Crossref if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Sir Gobet knows. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kokoy. I agree with the points you raised, and this is important to take care of these things with the journal first. And by the way, patents are citable. Patents are publications. Patents are considered publications, so they can be cited as well. And in terms of the contents of a patent, and I think maybe I could have another fireside chat on this about patenting. The contents of a patent, in many ways, once it's been published, is public, and depending on your intention, sometimes filing a patent is not your best option. Some things are left as trade secrets. So you must remember that it's not always patentable. The patenting is the best option. If you intend to keep the trade secret and are able to keep it secret for purposes of competitiveness, then you should focus on creating or growing that market with the trade secret, because once you reveal a patent, then it's a public information, and therefore you need to be equipped to pursue or to prosecute infringement. And sometimes patenting really is a protection. Really, it's not really about getting a royalty per se, but protection against competition. Or of course, when you patent and you have something new that's very strong, it can create revenues. And there are many people who have gotten rich with patents. That's for sure. So
we
Al,
will
I
have,
think you can have a
yeah,
firside chat on this.
yeah,
And
we
this is
planned
very
that,
helpful
Al.
for our young colleagues.
Yeah,
And
let's do that. I mean, definitely, I can also upgrade everyone
yeah.
what our UP.
And let's invite, well, our PASA member, who's TTBDO Director, Louis Season, and the team to talk to our PASA members and friends about patents. Okay, Al?
Best
So,
practices for
August.
universities is to have a tech transfer or knowledge transfer office that is already equipped to do all the prior art to accelerate. So you, as a researcher, you don't need to do that. But even the UST now is requiring you to do a prior art search on your topic prior to you writing a proposal, which I think is a good practice so that you just know the landscape, what we call it, the patent landscape of your technology. But I agree. Let's have a fireside chat all about IP, intellectual property, patents, copyrights, and trade secrets. So I'm happy to help in that part. And Gobet, of course, is definitely a good representative of
also Carlito Lebrilla has many.
His experience, especially specific technology and additive manufacturing, which is now really a hot area with Kokoy. And hope we can really make a dent on that. I'm looking forward for more patent that can be filed in a worldwide PCT level, not just the Philippine level. And unfortunately, we have not had that many. So I think let's do that. Yeah. But sorry, I got a question.
Okay, so next time we will find time for fireside chat on that.
And we have a Iris event Iris event on for the 14th about ranking of universities and the
so please just announce it.
Yeah, we'll announce it. CP has the connect.
Please announce it in PAASE.
And the chat in the PAASE.
Okay.
But he has already in the chat. But it's a good all for the ecosystem because it's all part of us developing our S&T ecosystem. Publications and patents are key drivers in terms of our ranking worldwide as well. So with that, thank you, Gobet, and nice job, Wendell and Giselle. I like the title. Who knows? I might be encouraged to write.
Well, my idea. We had to put a double G, otherwise E-N-G would be English. Meron na. So it had to be E-N-G-G. So hindi pa taken yung word na yon, SciEnggJ. So yan.
I like it.
Modern sounding na tayo. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I think this has been a very rich and very, very constructive discussion. And we just have to get on with our storytelling of all the good science that we are doing. I think we'd like to hear from Wendell as for the last words on this, and then Gobet, and then we'll call it a day. Yes,
yeah,
Wendell.
Thank you, Giselle. And well, I just would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And we look forward to your support to the journal. You can do it in many ways, of course, by submitting your article to the journal. You may also contribute. As we have mentioned earlier, we also accept monetary contributions to the journal. So we'll be able to sustain it well. Okay. And many of us here are part of the editorial board. So we look forward to your help as well with the journal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gobet, some final words?
Yes, so first of all, thank you, Giselle, for organizing this. Thank you, Wendell and Richmond, for all your hard work and creativity. I really like the journal, the name, and also the style that you have on the website. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge again, thank you again for all of you attending. I hope you've gotten inspiration and were able to get some tips, tricks on how to write your first paper. And so I'm looking forward to seeing your successes in your first paper. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you everyone on behalf of the whole SciEnggJ team. We
Just a
appreciate
quick
you guys.
question, Giselle.
Oi, Sec
Just a quick,
Ernie, please
yeah,
ask a
just a
question.
quick question. This is not really a trivia or trivium. I just want to ask Gobet if he is related to the new cardinal of the Philippines.
I asked that question before.
Good question.
Gobet, yeah, I was just tempted to to ask
Good.
that question. Are you?
Yeah, good question, Ernie. I wish I'd be holier, but anyway, I heard he's from the Visayas region. I
This
know
Vietnamese.
I know a lot of Advinculas, and I think even our ancestry goes all the way to the Visayas. So I don't know how many generations. I have no immediate relationship with him or some of his relatives, but I was really elated, and of course he's the cardinal
Yan-
in the Philippines. So yeah,
Well,
thank you.
you know, Advincula Gobet is a Latin, two Latin words, to the chains. That's the
Yeah,
meaning of to the chains. And in Rome, you know, you have that Advincula. There's a shrine there that is called Advincula, I think, with
yeah,
several steps. Yeah,
that's right, Ernie. Yeah,
yeah.
Saint Peter Advincula or something like that.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
To be
Peter
bounded with.
Peter to the
Peter
chin.
Advincula, and
Yeah.
so that bespeaks well of you.
Thank
Well,
you.
yan, this is
Okay.
Gobet. Walang kapaguran yan talaga. I
Yeah,
mean,
at saka
Ernie,
Gobet is so
he's
helpful,
yeah,
so helpful, so generous of his
so
time.
generous.
That's really great.
Yes.
It's a good exemplar, Gobet, you
Yeah.
are performing. I
No,
wish
I think
yeah.
he walks the talk.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's not just a lot of talk, it's a lot of
Hello.
on
Hello.
the ground, you know.
Yes.
How
Good
many
morning.
Filipinos has he trained? How many has he mentored who have earned their PhDs through the decades, no? So I think he's a perfect model of a good PAASE member.
I really appreciate your
Yeah,
thoughts and your
yeah.
praises, Ernie and Giselle, and of course, pleasure is mine too. I've been happy to be associated with excellent colleagues, you, young colleagues. I've been had the opportunity to mentor, and I'm very sure there are many kababayans who would like to do the same thing too. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gobet. Yeah.
All right. So if there are no more comments and questions, can we now call it a day? I mean, you know, this has been a very, very interesting chat for all of us. And I hope you learned a lot from the advice given by Gobet and Wendell and Richmond. And I tried my best as well. And I hope that you would allow Billy Atienza to write a popular science article about your publication. Okay? So
Thank
with
you,
that,
Giselle. Thank you, Gobet.
yes. Oh, Marge, thank you so much for being
Yeah,
with
this
us.
is great. Very interesting.
Very, no? And ako, we really, look, Henry Adorna is here as well. I saw Jericho Bacani earlier. I mean, these guys, they publish papers. Hi. Hello.
It's great to
From
see
all
this
over.
finally come out because we've been talking so long about this at the board. So it's great that it's
Yes.
finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, but you know,
Congratulations.
Marge, we
Yes.
had to take care of the transition because there are some manuscripts in process submitted to the PSL. Some are still being reviewed. Some are being revised. So we had to ask them if they are willing to get their papers published in SciEnggJ, because we needed to identify that cutoff. I said, we need to transition to SciEnggJ by July 1, which we've done. Okay, so majority of them agreed to
That's great.
be published in SciEnggJ, but of course, no fees, no fees yet if submitted to PSL, no. Pero starting July 1, manuscripts submitted to SciEnggJ will be charged a fee, but only when accepted for publication, meaning it had been revised and now it's accepted for publication. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for your encouragement and support. And we will end this fireside chat now. And
good night or good morning.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Giselle.
Mabuhay,
Thank you.
mabuhay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Giselle. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Robert.
Doc Gobet, thank you.
Thank you so much. Ang dami nag-attend. That's so good. Yeah.